What if you are a business owner and want to sell but lack the proper guidance and knowledge for the design of your legacy? I'd like to welcome Evan Pulling to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely morning. Welcome, Evan.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on, Angelina. Glad to be here.
I'm happy to have you here, and there's a lot that we can talk about regarding what you've discovered in your career journey, as well as your personal life, what you're offering now in the marketplace, and then I want to dig deep into the legacy that you would like to create for your family and for your future. So let's dive in, and I'm just going to put you on the spot for the moment. So I think you grew up in Ohio, or where did you grow up?
Yeah, I grew up in Ohio, central Ohio, near Columbus, in a really small town called Johnstown. So yeah, that's where it all began, the story.
Okay. And for a minute, I had lived in Ohio in Beaver Creek, which is right outside of Wright Pat Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio, in the
Okay.
United States. Yeah, for all the international listeners. And it was very interesting. I remember going to the Cincinnati Zoo and the Columbus Zoo for my birthday.
Oh, awesome.
All
It's a
right.
lot of driving.
Yeah. So you've had a very exciting career in the sense that you got to be a medic in the military, you got to work with FinCEN, but let's take it back. You had shared on a prior podcast that you came from a broken home, and I just wondered, what's the backstory?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, my parents divorced at a young age. I believe from my mom's account of things, my father was an alcoholic. My brother was born at birth with a birth defect, so paralyzed since birth. And yeah, so there was a lot of custody battles and lawsuits and visitations, and then lived with my father for a few years and found out that he was just um, later come to reconcile that he learned how to be a father from the military and from martial arts, and so very command and control style of raising up kids. And obviously that's not the best way. I mean, there's some time and place to be tough on your kids, but I think constant state of that is pretty bad. And so went to live with my mother. My mother had multiple relationships at marriages, and married a guy that at the time I didn't respect any authority figures at all. I was like clashing with him a lot. And you had mentioned my military service, and so by the time I was 17, 18, I kind of realized, like, I have a little bit of a disrespect for authority, a little lack of maturity. I just needed to kind of grow up. And and also endeavoring, like every young man kind of wants to be like their father, regardless if he's good or bad, I guess, in some degree. And so decided to join the military and to kind of get my path straight. And so, yeah, it's a high level overview of the young Evan.
Yeah, I find it interesting, and I had wondered if you had received discipline through the military or perhaps you already had it.
Oh, yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, huh.
Like, did that
Did I?
exposure, even if you were in the reserves, I think you were in the National Guard, did that provide you
Yeah.
enough discipline? Because one of the things that we chatted about in our preamble was the military that I was familiar with when I was growing up as a child and where it is today and its culture.
Yeah, no, I think the military definitely added a sense of discipline, respect, duty, honor, those kind of things, like any service person. But I also, I lived with my grandparents for a long time, and they instilled a lot of, Christian values into to me. So, the following after good morals and ethics, and trying to do the best that I can, and treat everyone with respect. And so there was, military kind of comes from everything. And there's a saying that says it takes a community or a village to raise a child, and so there was a lot that went into it for sure.
Yeah. So what was the culture like then when you were in the military? I think you said that you were a medic.
Yeah, yeah. They weren't the drill sergeants. It was a little different than I think like the 70s or 80s, like you were mentioning earlier. There wasn't, drill sergeants weren't allowed to physically hit you or kick you or beat you up or anything. But I mean, they still yelled at you, screamed in your face, told you to exercise, work out. We had 10, 15-mile marches, night fires, all day. So we still did a lot of the same similar training, which just without the some of the hazing that went on, I guess, in prior military service members' experiences.
Yeah. The other thing that you had shared in prior podcasts is that you had suffered from migraines and therefore you didn't have to go overseas. And I wondered if the migraines are still there before we jump into the next chapter of your life.
Oh, interesting question. I love it. Yes, they're still there. I think it's a part of who I am in a lot of ways, and I've learned how to manage them better. Like eating right, sleeping right, exercising, drinking enough water, just the simple things in life, not being too stressed out. And I think that plays a huge role in mitigating those migraines, but they still exist from time to time if I'm not careful.
Yeah. I heard magnesium also can make a difference.
Yes, magnesium's huge. So,
Yeah. So it's interesting because I know that you were asked the question about going overseas, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. He wasn't required, but perhaps in the
mhm.
National Guard, they thought if you're going to be in the MR, the medical room, or the ER, then then perhaps then they kept you back domestically. I mean, I don't know what the logic was, but there's definitely need in the United States.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was a combination of things because I was a medic that would be working with a field hospital, but also go out on like runs with like the infantrymen. So I would be in combat situations as well. And I think one of the reasons that they held me back is they didn't want me to have this massive migraine and not to be able to think clearly when needed to save someone's life.
Yeah. Well, migraines are harsh. I've had them, and they can
Yeah,
be debilitating. Like you can't even see the sunshine. You just have to go into like this quiet, dark space and yeah, shut down for a moment.
hibernate. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let me, if I can, venture on to the next chapter of your life. And I think you said that you
Sure.
worked with FinCEN.
Yeah, so I worked with a lot of financial institutions that had to report to FinCEN, which is for the viewers or listeners out there, is a financial crimes enforcement network.
Under the
It's a
Department of
Department of the
Treasury.
Treasury. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That enforces financial crimes, and so financial crimes investigations.
Yeah, to avoid them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I wondered, like, how did you get there? Because I almost wondered if what you saw in terms of the corruption provided the training to where you are today to want to start this platform and a website. But I need to take a step back and ask you the question of, what did you see while in that role?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I've seen a lot of things. There is a lot of money being funneled through the U.S. economy, and since the U.S. dollar is a reserve currency, it's used around the world for both good purposes and negative purposes as well. And so, you see all kinds of things from Russian involvement to, I've seen hit from the cartel members to kill other cartel members or other people, and you see all
Is
kinds
that a
of,
wire transfer or
sometimes wire transfers. Sometimes people are living here in the United States, even. They have houses or properties, and then you funnel the money, you follow the money back to the origins. Because ultimately it's illicit money that you're trying to make it look clean, look legitimate, so you can spend it like a legitimate person. And so you'll send it to one bank and to another and try to do this intricate web of financial deceit to try to hide the true source, which is pain, corruption, drugs, things like that. And then they want to buy nice cars and nice houses and live in society and not go to jail. And so yeah, so there was a lot of financial crimes behind it, human suffering, human trafficking, slavery, I mean all kinds of bad stuff.
interesting? I have heard that it takes 4 or 5 different transfers in between banks in order to clean money. Is that true?
Well, yeah, I mean, the more the better. Your money's never really clean. There's always some kind of record of it. It is the question is how long does it take to unwind
The
the
history?
web, yeah, the history of it, and find it back to its original source. And for some big time organizations, it takes a lot longer than some small guy trying to hide the fact that they're growing pot in their house and then they're selling it and they're trying to launder
Yeah.
that money. So
Well, it's
back when it was
interesting.
illegal.
I wonder with cryptocurrency if that will make it better or if that will just put us into like what I might call like an electronic meta prison.
Yeah. So cryptocurrency, a lot of people think that you have the ability to hide where your money is coming and going from, but there is a public ledger. And so there is technologies out there that can actually find out where the money's going and coming from. And a lot of the wallets now are subject to compliance laws where they have to reveal the owner of the accounts. And so even crypto, I mean, you can't really hide what you're doing through crypto. A lot of people think you can, but it's not as or it's not as anonymous as they think it is.
Yeah, I got ripped off one time regarding cryptocurrency and I was not able to get my money back. I did report it,
Yeah.
but it made no difference. And I thought, oh, what a learning lesson. Because unless somebody really knows what they're doing, that crypto world can eat them alive.
Yeah. I mean, you can
Yeah.
track where it's going, but to get the money back is, yeah, near impossible for sure.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up, you know, we're going into the, I almost wonder like Web 2.5, Web 3.0, and you're smiling. Tell me why you're smiling.
I mean, what is it? It's like data on the internet doubles every like 12 hours or 24 hours or something like that. It's crazy. So it wouldn't surprise me. We're in a new era of technology.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I wondered about is the back doors and like the loopholes. And I wondered if you were able to notice the back doors that are left open where maybe it's not as secure as maybe we think, or maybe you were just looking at the paper history of funds going from point A to B to C to D.
Yeah. So my role was mostly looking at accounts, and so there's a it's called the Bank Secrecy Act,
Bank
and
Secrecy Act, yeah.
it gives all the banks the options to or the ability to look at people's accounts without them doing it. And so, I had the opportunity to really open and kind of going back to your question about like how I got into what I'm doing now. I reviewed hundreds, if not thousands of business accounts. And so when I'm reviewing an account, I have to really look at the business. And so if it's in a industry that I don't understand, and I have to understand the industry, is this transaction legitimate for this industry? Who are their suppliers? Are these legitimate suppliers? Are these shell companies? Who are they selling it to? Are these legitimate customers? And so really digging into the inner workings of a business, how it works, how it's designed, that kind of thing. And so yeah, it's mostly transactional to your question,
Yeah,
as far as tracking.
I think you gained a skill set that now gets to be leveraged and parlayed into this new venture.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely got my interest peaked for sure.
Yeah. So I'm just going to stay here for another moment. What else did you see? Because
Wow.
I know that when you're looking at today's business brokerage industry, one of the things you said I think you said it's about 250 years old, and you've also come
Mhm.
across the corruption, but just want to go back because you definitely gained a skill set.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just wondered what else you saw. Like you looked at different industries, you looked at the history.
Yeah, so, I mean, within the compliance realm of things, yeah, I've seen a lot of things, a lot of, because of our relation to Mexico, I mean, everything you think of from, drug involvement, I like thieving, so like people stealing cars and selling them and then moving money across the border or cutting off the catalytic converters on cars because they have precious metals and then taking them to some kind of metallurgy shop and getting them melted down and trying to smuggle, these precious metals across the border and the cash transactions involved in that. So there's a lot of things that people do. I mean, even as far as putting like drugs like wrapped into like plastic and putting them into cattle and then transporting the cattle across the border and then you know get retrieving those drugs from the cattle. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy tricks that go on and try to smuggle drugs in this country. It's a large industry, and I think the experts even say that 2008 collapse wasn't so bad because of the amount of money and because of the drug industry. If it wasn't for the drug industry, our country would have been in a much worse space. It's crazy to think that, but that's how big it is. It's billions, if not trillions, of dollars that's involved.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the Federal Reserve, in fact, calls their system the legacy system, ironically, but on bump. Yeah. So
Yeah,
with crypto, it's almost like they're just going from one ledger to another, but perhaps there'll be more transparency regarding the open source as much as it could be with the cryptocurrency, whether that's XRP or Ripple or all the different types that are coming out these days.
I would hope so because I think the volatility of the crypto system makes it a very um, unwise investment in a lot of ways. Because at the end of the day, then the value of it is only based on what people perceive it to be. It's not based on any real hard assets or anything like that. And so, but a lot of people who are advocates for cryptocurrency don't want to have regulation on the cryptocurrency. So it's a kind of a catch 22.
Yeah. And I think Donald Trump tapped someone to be the crypto leadership role. I can't think of, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so very interesting. So now you've decided to create this startup and you looked at the business brokerage community. And I, at one time, I'd worked as a commercial real estate broker and I'd sold a business. So I know what goes into it. And it's different than just selling a building because you're looking at goodwill and other components that are important to the buyer. So tell me, you looked at the business brokerage industry and what did you not like? Like, what did you see were the problems?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say first that I think business brokers, they definitely have a place, and I think that there's a time and place for business brokers. And so if you're a business owner and you need one, I think you should definitely hire a business broker. But I think um, there's like probably 15 million businesses, and about 90% of them are under $1 million. And so for a business broker um, to sell a smaller business, it takes a lot more work in a lot of ways because the smaller businesses don't have their financials in order. The P&L and the balance sheet and all that. They don't have policies and procedures in place. They don't have, good tax accounting. They don't, have a good sales team, marketing team, those kind of things. And so a lot of times what happens is those business brokers are just employees. They're not really owning anything. And so when they're like, "Hey, I own a business," the problem with that thinking that way from a buyer's perspective is a buyer wants to come in and buy the business as an asset and wants the business to continue to run and make
On day one.
essentially print money. Yeah. They know that if I put $100,000 in, I'm going to get $10,000 every year. So it's a 10%, return. With a business owner, a lot of the times, if they were to suddenly disappear for whatever reason, that business ceases to exist. It just stops functioning. And so a lot of times, it's not really business as a job. And a lot of business owners don't like hearing that. But at the end of the day, why would a buyer pay money, take out a loan, and then buy this business, but it's actually a job? Last time I checked, I go and work at a company, they pay me to work for them. But this is now the buyer has to pay you to work your job. And so that's why 80% of businesses never sell because owners think, well, I'm making 100,000, $200,000 a year. I'm going to wait till the day that I want to retire, and then I'm just going to put it on the market and it's going to sell, no problem. But then they're met with the hard reality that they don't sell. And to segue to your answer about business brokers specifically, one of the things is that business brokers, because they know how hard it is to prepare these businesses and the failure rate of these smaller businesses, they charge a much higher commission, think 10, 15, maybe even 20%. They charge a lot of money down because they know that they're not going to have a high success rate. And when a $5 or $10 million business walks in their door, well, when you're thinking of commission, who is the business broker going to care more about? The guy that they're going to get 20, 30,000 for and have to work 4 or 5 times harder, or the $5, $10 million business where they're going to get, a $500,000 paycheck. And the reality is business brokers don't care as much about the small guy as the bigger businesses out there. That's one. And I've got a whole list of reasons that
Well, I
I
think
think
I
business
think this is
brokers.
important. The key points that you're bringing up. I mean, I remember back in the day, there was a joke amongst the commercial real estate brokers that we got paid 10 times as much for the deals that went through for the deal that didn't, because all that volunteer work on the 9 deals that didn't go through, and then the 10th one that did. But I think that you're bringing up a really good point regarding many business owners. It becomes their baby, their dream, their identity. And I
Yep.
know that in that book by Robert Kiyosaki, Cash Flow Quadrant, he talked about being self-employed versus a business owner. A business owner's role is very different than being, like you had talked about, self-employed within a business. A business
Right.
owner is going to delegate a certain duties and roles to a president or a CEO or some type of job title to take care of management from day to day unless they want to be that person. And so I think a lot of the times somebody goes into business because either they see a need in the marketplace or they just aren't making it in a regular W-4 job. W-4 for anyone who's in the United States. And so then I think they then find themselves starting a business, but it's a whole other skill set when it comes time to actually, like you had said, make it a true business with policies and procedures and not just that your uncle of the family business owns it. And there's all this like pride and assumptions around it. Because you're right, when somebody's got to sell a business, it's got to be packageable. You got to put it all together. And a lot of times people don't want to think about making even like, I'm not saying that they have to make their business a franchise, but even when McDonald's sells a satellite of theirs, it's very cookie cutter. Like they walk in
Hmm.
day one and they just have to follow like the manual. Like in the military, I'm sure you gave, we're given lots of manuals and it was how to do it from A to Z. And some business
Right.
owners, they don't think that way. And then they get offended when a buyer doesn't see their business as valuable as they do because it's their baby.
Yeah. I mean, when you literally bleed, cry, sweat, struggle, I mean, yeah, a lot of the identity of a business owner is wrapped up in the business. And this podcast talking about legacy, I think legacy is a huge aspect to this because these employees are not just employees for these small businesses. I talk to so many business owners that say, so and so's been with me for 15 years. This person over here is 20 years, 25 years. I talk to guys like, yeah, this guy's been with me 30 years. I'm like, wow. So like these people are the family. And a lot of times, business owner looks at the buyer and is like, well, that buyer's incompetent. And the answer is, yeah, of course they're incompetent compared to you. You've been doing it for 40 or 50 years. They're only going to have a fraction of your experience. And so the whole legacy piece is huge too in the selling process. And I think that's a huge piece that's left out of the business brokers package because in the business brokers idea, their objectives are squarely aligned with how can we maximize the value of this business and how can I maximize my commission
Yes, it's
when
called not
the
leaving any money on the table.
not leaving any money on the table. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's their objectives, but and that's also the objectives of the business owner as well. But business owner, I believe, have a secondary objectives, especially for the smaller mom and pop shops, and that's to make sure that their suppliers are taken care of. If you're working with somebody, you're going to have these relationships where you're working with people that are supplying the goods and services that you need for your business. You're going to have relationships with your employees. I touched on that earlier. You're going to have relationships with the community in which you work and serve, right? And so um, it's not all an equation about how much money you can get. A lot of it's wrapped up into are my people going to be taken care of? And I think business brokers really miss that. And so what I try to do as a business owner is I try to connect the business owner and the buyer to come together so that the business owner can really see not only can they afford my business, but are they going to be a good fit for running the business? Are they going to be a good fit for the culture in our business? Are they going to be a good fit for the community? All those things that I mentioned. Because I've heard stories where, business broker sits down with the buyer and the seller. The business broker has handled most of the interactions from the buyer side. And so the sellers had very little interactions. They sit across the table and talk to the buyer and they're like, I don't like this guy. Like he's a jerk or he's arrogant or I don't like the way it feels. And then, since the owner has no skin in the game, they haven't had any investment in this process, no struggle, no hardship in this process. It's so easy for them to say, yeah, I don't know about this. Find me another buyer. And that makes it frustrating for the business broker. It makes it stressful for the seller, the buyer. And I think really connecting the buyer and seller together is the equation. And then, I really advocate for owners to hire the experts they need, hire the accountants, hire the lawyers, hire the certified exit planning advisors. Because here's the thing, you got to pay for those things anyways. So, do just yeah, it sucks that you're working in your business as the owner, the operator, and you have to now talk to buyers. But I think at the end of the day, it ends up to a better result.
Well, I think you're cutting out the middleman or the middlewoman in
Yeah,
that sense. And I know one of the things you brought up before was the fact that sometimes these business brokers will not present a deal. And I'm aware of that, having worked in the commercial brokerage industry.
yeah,
That offer could be withheld for a number of reasons. And if the tree falls in the middle of the forest and no one hears it, no one hears it.
right. And sometimes that's for the better. I mean, sometimes offers or people are not worth the time of the business owner. But sometimes it's just because it's not maximizing the commission of the broker. And I think Um, like my company, Biz Retire, we want it to serve the business owners that are 1 million and under. You know, I've had many meetings with brokers, and they're like, "Well, if you see any businesses that are 1 million plus, they don't even really want to deal with." But then I ask them, "Would you take someone that's 1 million under?" It's like, "Yeah, we would take them. Why not? I mean, we just put them on the listing platform and see what happens." But that's their attitude towards some of these smaller businesses. We'll just kind of see what happens. And if you kind of see what happens 10 times, you're gonna strike gold one of those 10 times. And That's the theory. And it's so sad that, nine business owners now, lose their health, go to a divorce. They have to dissolve their business because the selling process took so long and they needed the money right away. And the business brokers kind of just like laissez-faire about it, like whatever. And just breaks my heart, man. I've seen so many stories, so many bad stories.
So you've
So
now started this website to help connect A with B, the sellers with the
mhm.
buyers. What other corruption did you come across that your website can remedy? And I do
Not
think
so
we're
much
living,
corruption,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
not so much corruption. I just think so. Back to what you had mentioned. Business brokers have been around for 250 years, and you know, I kind of think Wild Wild West. You got the cowboys, and even before that, honestly, business brokers were a huge part of that. Like you needed someone that knew the laws, that knew how to advertise and market, could, do buyer agreements and paperwork, connect the buyer and seller together. You didn't have internet and phones back then. And even, 80s or so, great. But now, we have chat GPT and internet and, Zoom calls for crying out loud. We have so many ways to connect with people. And
And also
I
connect with
think
the knowledge. Keep going.
yeah, the knowledge, absolutely. And so I think that one of the things that business brokers are missing is that they still want to be this middleman person, because what happens is it allows them to have control over the transaction. And if you have control over the transaction, you now can take priority over where the money goes. And so the control is about money. It's not about the well-being of the buyer, in my opinion, or the seller. I envision if my company were to start connecting buyers and sellers directly, that business brokers would still exist. They would still be valuable, but they could exist in more of an advisory role. Hey, Mr. Business Broker, I'll pay you $100 or $200 an hour to help me package my business, to point me to an accountant, point me to, a lawyer,
A team
have
of experts.
referrals. Yeah,
Yeah.
and kind of step out of this, hey, we have to control the transaction, and you let the business owner and business seller, buyer connect and figure things out. And
I would
so,
think a lot of business owners would be keen on this idea because they want to have their finger on the pulse. And if they could wrap
mhm,
their mind around running a business, they can tackle this topic as well. If,
yeah,
yeah,
100%. I mean, you build a business and you ran it for 40 years, you're a pretty competent person.
yeah. I mean,
With
it's interesting. I had a guest, and I've had also clients talk about this idea that entrepreneurship is like failure after failure after failure. And that's like the lifestyle, but they've got such thick skin. They're like, all right, time to get back up again and reach my goals and go on another day because a customer is way tougher than a boss in the
yeah,
marketplace. Yeah.
100%. I
So,
mean, and that's it. Sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead.
No, I was just affirming what you said. I 100% agree with you. And I think with a little bit of guidance from a business broker in an advisory setting, kind of like pay for what you need and um then yeah, they would be able to, step into a new role as a business broker. And they would get paid. They wouldn't have to work, 10 businesses, not get paid for nine of them and then only get paid for one. They could actually get paid for the work that they put in. I think that would be a better model because then they would be more incentivized to help them and not so incentivized to only put money in their pockets. They'd be doing what's in the best interest of the business owner, which would mean that their objectives are more aligned, and it would be more of a win-win for everyone involved. I think, 50 to 70% of what a business broker does is connecting buyer and seller together. And so when you pay a commission, you got to realize that if you have $1 million business and it's a 10% commission, that's 100 grand. So 50 grand of that is connecting buyer and seller together. BizRetire does it for $100 a month. And so you're looking at like a fraction of the cost to do that. And then business owner, the money that they save, they can use that money to pay the experts that they need for the rest of the process.
Yeah. I think on one hand, some owners might be so busy that they'll want to delegate, but I think on the other hand, if you give them an invitation, an opportunity to tackle this subject themselves, they're going to be all on it. Because one of the things that I've learned from coaching in the last 10 years is if I give the answer to a client, it's interesting information at best. But if they come up with it, they own it.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is one of the reasons why, like on this podcast, and I'm going to ask you in a moment, of, what would you like your legacy to be? Once you answer that, you own that answer. I didn't give it to you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you want me to go ahead and jump in that question there?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna pivot in a moment. Yeah, so let
Okay.
me transition over to the legacy bit. First of all, what does the word legacy mean to you personally?
When I think of legacy, I think of people gathering around my casket. I'm dead. I'm in, and what is the memory that I left behind? What is the experience of a life well lived? Are they there because they just want my money? Are they there because they feel obligated to be there because they're my family or relatives? Or did I have a profound impact in their life? Did I do something that really changed the course and trajectory of their life for the rest of their life? Did I leave a lasting impression where they felt cared for and loved? And so for me, that's a legacy. Building a good legacy is, um, yeah, just people being there because they want to be there, and that I
Mm,
had a good impact for their life,
yeah,
and that's it for me.
that's very cool. So memories, the experience. I thought you might have said that you. Um, well, let me ask you this question then. In 1 to 2 sentences, what would you like your legacy to be?
Yeah, it's great. So for me, it's living a life that points others to the love of God.
Mm,
Whether that's my family, whether that's in my business practices and how I do business. Um, it's being for people, doing the unexpected, being kind and charitable, living life the way that um, living life with a light that I hope that I can shine on the world and help them live in a similar way. That's what I want my legacy to be.
oh, that's brilliant. I thought you were going to say something along the lines of like less corruption.
Well, if people are shining light on each other, then I believe the world would have a lot less corruption. So it kind
Yeah.
of takes care of itself.
If you were to distill your top 3 or 4 core values, what would you say that they are? Core values or guiding principles?
Hmm. Wow. These are great questions. Core value or guiding principles. I mean, love has to be it. It's not the feeling, the feel good type of love. It's love is work. It's hard. It's sacrificial. And doesn't expect anything in return. Um, for me, is innovation. I love to think outside of the box, so making the world a better place through vision, innovation. I don't know what the right word would be, but um, something like that. And yeah, man, you're asking some really great questions. Love, innovation. I don't know. I can't think of anything else. It's trust, trustworthiness,
Okay.
and I would say, yeah. I mean, those are a good solid three. We'll stick with those.
So you said trust, innovation, and what was the other one?
Love. Yeah,
Oh, that's right. That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very nice. And I think to speak into them is important because, and I've brought this up before, both to clients as well as on this podcast, that it's not like we go down to the local coffee shop, whether that's Starbucks or Coffee Bean or wherever, and they say, Evan, here's your mocha latte, blah, blah, blah. And what would you like your legacy to be also for the day? Yeah, now that I've said that, maybe Howard Schultz might start to.
Hey, there you go.
He's going to write the name
Put a
Evan
little
on the
Britain
cup and
messages
then,
on the cup.
what's
Yeah, you
that?
better trademark that. Yeah, just they'll put like a little like what's your legacy on the cup, and it'll say what's your goals for today. They'll have these little messages. You should get on that. Work with some
Yeah, what are your top 3 to 4 values? But I think more so it's like, what would you
yeah
like your legacy to be? Because people don't ask that in society. And yet,
yeah
we're all coming to like that end of the day, it's death and taxes and the Egyptian boatman, et cetera. But I'm bump.
yeah. So true. But I think that's good. I think we need to ask questions like that because otherwise we get so focused on the day in and day out. And I think it's true for we're both business owners out there. Um, you can get so caught up in the everyday task and then kind of forget what's the point of it all. Like, what am I trying to achieve? And if your end goal is just money and success, I mean, you can look at just about any successful person where that's been their goal, and they've ended up in a pretty dark place, most of them. And so it's not enough, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, if it's just about the materialistic success and money, I think it's sometimes it's to heal a wound if they didn't have it, because
Mhm.
2/3 of today's affluent are self-made, which means number one, they were probably in survival mode growing up. And so that still is with them unless they can heal that core wound. And also, speaking of legacy, they probably didn't talk about what they wanted their legacy to be at the kitchen table, the dining room table, or the holiday meals. I mean, I think that question of like, what would you like your legacy to be? I think it matters. I think the answer matters. But
Yeah. Yeah, because it drives everything you do and the intentionality behind it. And it's what gets you up in the morning and drives you towards your goals. Because I mean, fear and anger and escapism from your past can only fuel your journey so long before it comes crumbling in. It's not a firm foundation to build your life upon. It will fail you eventually. And I believe that. And so yeah, I think having a good solid legacy. And I love the question. It's great. So thank you.
well, I'm glad that it's well received. Yeah, I think to have a legacy plan, like you had spoke about intentionality, it's like, why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah,
Yeah. If,
100%.
if, if one is self-aware enough to want to reflect on that question and not just like be a glory hound in the world of like, oh, I'm gonna achieve and achieve. And yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So so final question as we start to draw to a close. If you were to set aside a weekend or two a month to design a hardcover coffee table book, what images, pictures, lessons, stories would fill its pages? I know one of the things that you wrote to me that you said, I'm willing to talk about all the struggles and growth along the way. And I
Mm.
wondered, would your hardcover coffee table book cover this at all? Or would it just be pictures?
Yeah, I think so. Storytelling is so powerful. And I think, um, when you look at like Superman, for example, and all his strengths, he's a pretty boring character if he doesn't have any struggles along the way. And I think too, for a book of my life or a story would have to include the imperfections, the things that I've got wrong, the failures, and the path along the way. Just becoming a man, becoming a husband, business owner, a person of the community in my church and things like that. But those all come with grave mistakes that I've made and failures along the way. And those failures are not unique to me. And I think one of the beautiful things of like the story of the Bible, for example, is even though we're talking about shepherds 2,000 years ago, they struggled with some of the same things that we struggle with today. Wanting money, wanting lust, power, all these things, and they're still with us today. And so, um, yeah, I would hope my story would be open and honest and transparent, and that would inspire someone else to continue living and striving regardless.
Yeah. So any images or pictures?
Images or pictures. Um, yeah, I think it would be the sad kid that felt rejected in school from teachers and kids, but still, ranked really high in his class. It would be the kid that stood next to my brother in a wheelchair as he competed in the Special Olympics and won his gold medals and things like that. And it would be getting a black belt in Hapkido, going through the military, and getting married would be huge. Family and friends, community. My food forest. So I live in the Phoenix desert, and I've got a food forest with tons of trees, tropical trees, and I love gardening and things like that. Yeah, so those would be some of the images that you would see.
Very nice. Very nice. So as we come to a close, any other final thoughts about your business, the topic of legacy, or a good website for a listener to find you?
Yeah, I would tell business owners, I would say, it's a very daunting thing to plan for exit, and I would really encourage them. There is such a massive buyout from large corporations buying out small businesses and sucking the life out of communities. And so, if you're a business owner, There are people in that community that know your business, that love your business, have memories in your business or the services. Maybe you're the AC guy who repaired someone's house for free, and it was a struggling mother that couldn't do anything without you there. Or maybe it was a coffee shop where someone landed their first business meeting. These kind of things. I would really encourage you to get in touch with some professionals. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll help you for free. Get in touch with professionals that can help you plan to get your business prepared, and I'll even list your business for free on our platform. And so my business is bizretire.com. You can check me out there. And I'm also on LinkedIn. So I'm really active on LinkedIn. So under Evan Poling is a great way to connect with me as well. And would love to help out as much as I can and preserving the heart of American businesses.
Yeah. Well, entrepreneurs make the fiber of society. They're the engine behind the capitalism. Their ideas
Yep,
and sweat equity and creation of jobs.
100%. Yeah. And we're losing them. We're losing it. It's sad to see. So
Well, I think that your support is going to help because I think one of the things, look, you're like one of the good guys that wants to make a difference in society. That's how I kind of saw it. You're telling me you're disrupting a 250-year industry and regarding the power players that aren't rotated out frequently enough. And I thought, he's going to be one of the good guys, one of the heroes. So,
well, thank you. I'll try my best.
yeah. Well, before I read my closing paragraph, we started out with the intention of today's episode of what if you are a business owner and want to sell, but you lack the guidance and the knowledge, for to do it well if you're going to do it at all, and to be realistic and honest about it. Because I think the honest conversations are important. It just can't be the illusion of my business is the best, and then somebody runs out to the middle of the football field and gets squashed by, the reaction in the marketplace. So
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes the same skills that got you to success are not the same skills that are used to sell your business. And whatever you are as a business owner, whatever your expertise is in, you wouldn't tell someone to hire an amateur in your field. You would tell them to hire an expert. And so I would also say hire an expert, someone to help you uh, be successful.
well, it's been a pleasure to host you today. Thank you very much, Evan.
Thank you so much, Angelina. It's been awesome.
In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder of Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach and consult. Hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. So if you're tuning in today on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends, send an email to either Evan or myself, and let us know your thoughts and feelings about today's episode. So thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Evan, for speaking into your legacy.